Okay, we're live.
So thank you very much, and can I welcome you all to our July Cabinet meeting. With me in the meeting room this evening are Councillors Natasha Proctor, Councillor Peymana Assad and Councillor Philip O'Dell. Just changing my microphones around so I can see better. That's it. And some members are joining us virtually. They are Councillor Sue Anderson, Simon Brown, Keith Ferry, Varsha Palmer, Christine Robson, Christian Suresh and John Higgins, who's the voluntary sector representative. There's someone on, not on mute, I think it's Canty. Could you switch off for a moment, Canty? Thank you, that's a bit better. Actually, it's a good timing really, because I need now to ask. So also joining us virtually this evening are Councillors Marin Ashton and Jana Patel and Kanti Radbadia, who are here for item 5, Councillor questions. And can I ask colleagues to turn their mobile phones on to silent, please? There's nothing worse than vibrating phones mid-presentation. Could you also note that Cabinet members, could you keep your videos on at all times, but put microphones on mute unless speaking, and everyone else switch off your videos and put microphones on mute until you're invited to speak. If you would like to speak at any time during the meeting, can you please use the hand function? There's nothing worse than over talking on a recorded meeting. The meeting is being audio and video recorded and will be available on the Council's website. Before we actually start, I'd just like to, oh, sorry, I do believe we have received apologies from Councillor Paul Osborne. Yes, I think we have. Thank you. So before we actually start the meeting, I think I'd like to just say that the past 18 months have been relentless and the delivery of our strategic services have been our priority. The past 7 months of lockdown and restrictions has hit many residents very hard. We have all looked forward to a reduced infection rate, for hospitals to return to normal, for outstanding operations to be booked in, for services to return to normal, and to be able to go out to socialise in shops and restaurants and pubs, for our lives to move to some real sense of normality. The Prime Minister has announced that restrictions will be reduced from next Monday, but this is against a rising rate of infections that is expected to peak in the middle of August, with between 100 and 150,000 people testing positive per day. We have had the most successful vaccination programme the city has ever seen, far in advance of anything we've ever done around measles or even flu. And the evidence is showing that it is working in reducing the number in needing hospital admissions. However, we are still in worrying times. For that reason, we will continue to advise the wearing of masks. We will continue the mantra of face, hands, space and fresh air. But also people are very concerned, and many have told me that they welcome our regular update at Cabinet to show how the virus is affecting us in Harrow. So I'd therefore like to propose that item 8, our regular COVID updates from our Chief Executive, Sean Harris, to be heard after item 4. Is that agreed? Excellent. I would also like to invite the Chair and Vice Chair of Scrutiny, which is Councillor Sachi Shah and Councillor Stephen Greek, to speak on item 9, which is the Harrow Strategic Development Partnership. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
And finally, and probably more important in some sense, before we start, I would also like to say how proud I was, and I am, of our men's England team for reaching the Euros final. Against other European teams, it is an amazing achievement. Throughout the competition, they all exemplified team spirit and togetherness. The way they presented themselves, and therefore England, is a way that we can only aspire to. Their spirit united the country and showed us that we can endure in defeat just as we can in victory. The hateful response from a small minority to what has been a successful summer of football only underlines not only how much more needs to be done, but that those that wish to divide us will not win. The Chief Executive and I both publicly confirmed that Harrow has zero tolerance for this type of hateful behaviour, and we have put on the record our condemnation against those responsible. It is not acceptable in any context, and must never be seen as something that anyone in the spotlight must endure. I want to take this opportunity, and I will use every opportunity available, to reiterate and reinforce our proud history of anti-racism in this borough. We are one of the most diverse boroughs in the country, and our diversity is our strength. Our strength comes from standing together across our diverse communities to condemn hate in all its forms and towards whomever it is targeted. In Harrow, it is not acceptable, and if you witness hate, please report, don't tolerate. And that is the message we will continue to give, and we will support those people to make sure that everyone feels safe in a borough of Harrow. So in moving to item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. So I've received apologies from Councillor Adam Swerfy and Antonio Weiss and Councillor Paul Osborne. Do we have any other apologies? I haven't seen any hands come up. So declarations of interest, item 2, they have been published on the council's website. Could Cabinet please note that Councillor Keith Ferry has declared a pecuniary interest in items 9 and 17, and we'll leave the meeting for those items. Can I have any declarations from other members present in the meeting? There's no hands up. If you become aware of a pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest during the meeting, if you could put your hand up and let us know, and we'll record it at that time. So we now move on to item 3, which is petitions. All petitioners have 1 minute to read out the terms of the petition. So first of all, are there any petitions from Cabinet members? No. Are there any petitions from councillors present in the virtual meeting? I've been advised that Councillor Karima Marika, you wish to present 2 petitions.
Yes.
So did you want to read them out?
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Leader. Leader, the Cabinet and the dear officers, on behalf of the residents in Fleming Road and North Avenue, to request the installation of said security gates at the rear of 100 and Fleming Road. This is important to the resident in order to protect priority and community from the recent increase of antisocial behavior such as drug dealing with flying tipping. Despite ongoing reporting, this has not been resolved. So the resident Mahul Pandya did community petition, the petition and handed over to me. So I asked this myself, Karima, Adam and Christine, we asked this installations has to be approved by this cabinet and the leader and the dear officers. My second petition is on behalf of the residents in Elm Drive. We West Harrows councillors has received a number of calls and emails from residents regarding concern about the payments. We have done regular visit to that area and come into agreement with the resident, just like even side footway on 1 to 81 odd side should be prioritized for resurfacing. We understand the robust progress of resurfacing on storing system, but however, we 3 councillors, Adam, Christine and myself, Karima, have empathy, respect, dignity and duty of care for the lot of vulnerable people living in it. Example, dementia, heart patients. So we ask dear leader and the officers and the whole cabinet to consider them, and we stand up with the residents of Elm Drive to this resurfacing to be done in Elm Drive fully. Thank you, leader, for allowing me to speak. Thank you, cabinet, and thank you, officers.
Thank you, Karima. You presented 2 petitions there, which is good. We'll forward them to the appropriate officer, and they will respond back to you directly.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any other petitions to be presented tonight? Nope, I don't see any hands up for that one. So that now moves on to item number 4, which is public questions. None have been notified, which now moves us on to which, as we agreed earlier, to move the agenda to our regular item on COVID. So I'm going to move over to ask Sean Harris, our Chief Executive, to move the presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Cabinet. Thank you, councillors and residents of Harrow who are joining the meeting virtually. If I could ask for my presentation to be put up, please.
It's there, Sean.
It is. Thank you very much. And this, as the Leader of the Council said, is my regular monthly update to the Cabinet on the situation relating to COVID-19. And the items that I'm going to cover this evening, I'm going to talk about the position in relation to the case levels in Harrow, what's happening in terms of the exit lockdown roadmap, the ongoing response from the council in related to our general activity and how we're dealing with it in respect of services, to highlight issues around vaccination, our work on planning recovery, and to highlight our future work and the impact and challenges around organisational capacity and resilience. So in terms of the overall position, we are in the middle of, or certainly a growing position of, a third wave of COVID-19 cases in Harrow, in London and nationally. Harrow actually has one of the lowest case levels in London and is significantly behind the national average. However, there has been a very significant increase in cases over the past couple of weeks. Under normal circumstances, based upon our previous experience of wave 1 and wave 2, this would automatically be translating into significant additional hospitalisations and fatalities as a result of COVID. But as the leader mentioned in his introduction, there has been a significant reduction in the relationship between coronavirus case levels and hospitalisation due to the successful vaccination programme. It is the case, though, and myself and the leader have been on a number of meetings this week where, although they are increasing from a low base, there has been a doubling of numbers of people both in hospital locally and across London in the last couple of weeks. And as has been referred to in various briefings, there is an expectation that case levels and the impact of COVID will continue to rise, certainly throughout August and possibly beyond. But because of the success of the vaccination programme, government has made a decision that the step 4 of the exit roadmap will be implemented from next Monday, which results in a whole series of changes, both in relation to the general rules in respect of COVID, but also how this will happen in relation to schools bubbles, isolation after the 16th of December, and also changes to travel. And all of this has been done alongside an attempt to try and maximise the vaccination programme in the run-up to next Monday's position. And obviously, and there's been significant debate around this week, and I'm sure it will continue to do so, we are entering in a new phase of response in relation to COVID-19, and the risks, there are risks involved in this strategy and living with COVID-19. So we'll have to work through at a local level how we interpret and respond to the guidance along with other organisations in order that we can maintain a grip on the pandemic in order that we can respond as effectively as possible. So this is the epidemiological dashboard prepared by Carol Furlong, our Director of Public Health, and you can see from this graph the rapid rise in cases that are shown in the bottom corner, the overall case levels, and also a rising case levels amongst older residents. To date, much of the rise in coronavirus has been driven by school-aged children and young people, and therefore the impact in terms of health has been less, but there are some concerns about how this will translate through into the older population. So whilst the vast majority of people have been double vaccinated, there are still significant numbers of people who are not, so risks remain. In terms of the overall position, as I've said, we move into step 4 of the lockdown exit from Monday with a series of change in rules. And as you can see, and as has been reflected from the growing case levels overall, actually the pandemic is a long way from over, and we should expect there to be ongoing challenges for many months in relation to coronavirus, albeit in a situation which will be much more manageable in terms of the impact in terms of the NHS and social care. Council will still be involved in a number of areas, supporting the exit from lockdown, engaged with testing, track and trace, continuing to particularly be focused around any surge testing in relation to variants of concern, which is one of the biggest risks to the overall programme, and also to be involved in supporting the ongoing delivery of the current vaccination programme, but also being very focused on beginning the planning process to start the autumn booster vaccination programme, which will be very much aimed at those people who are most vulnerable, to maintain those levels of protection for the most vulnerable throughout what will be a challenging winter, combining both COVID and the normal winter flu season. This slide just summarises the position in terms of the lockdown announcement, the changes to the easing of restrictions on hospitality, and the ending of social distancing and the ending of the compulsory wearing of face coverings. Although, as people will have seen, and I will go on to talk about shortly, there still remains in place very strong guidance from government that face coverings should be worn in many places, and that people should seek to avoid excessive social contact, particularly with those people that they don't know, in order that people can continue to take responsibility and reduce the spread of the virus during the pandemic. There does remain advice and guidance rather than instruction in place for people to continue to work from home, but we are taking the opportunity of opening our civic hub from Monday, meaning that we'll be able to increase the number of staff who are able to come into the civic centre at any one time from probably around 50 staff to around 200, which will help people who need to come together to do collaborative working, etc. We'll also be reopening fully a number of council services, and also changing the way in which we deliver those that we've had to deliver virtually into a situation where, applying the appropriate controls, we will be able to meet with people more effectively, but continuing to be in a safe environment in the new ways of working. So obviously, as I said, the government issued new guidance for employers, workplaces and venues yesterday. In many respects, the advice and guidance that's in place is very similar to what existed at the moment, but this is done on an advice and an encouragement basis rather than on a statutory basis. And the advice and position overall is to move forward cautiously. So we are, as I've said, reopening services and allowing more staff to come into the Civic Centre for collaborative work. But we are continuing, based upon that advice, to expect staff to wear face coverings, maintain social distancing. We will continue to ensure that we follow a strict cleaning and ventilation regime, and also to encourage staff and members to undertake testing when they come into the workplace, and also continuing to make sure that PPE is appropriately worn and delivered for staff who are working in personal social care scenarios. We're going to keep the position under review, and we would expect to, by the time we do an update for the Cabinet in September, to either say whether or not we are able to release the restrictions a little more in terms of our own buildings and premises, or depending on what happens with the virus, we may need to keep them in place for much longer. But we're keeping these situations under review. And the Corporate Director of Resources, Charlie Stewart, sent out an email to all councillors today explaining in more detail what would happen in our buildings, how we would operate, in what ways the public can return to access services, in what way, and how we're going to ensure that we keep the most effective arrangements in place going forward. It is also the case as well that the pandemic is a long way from being over, and this particular part of the presentation covers the work that we will be doing to help and support local businesses exit from lockdown. Although there is the council's enforcement role will go, we anticipate and expect that businesses will seek a lot of advice from the council as they look to implement new guidance. We will continue to roll out our community testing programme, support the current and future vaccination programme, and continue to provide isolation support for local people, because as many people know, as the case rates increase, the number of people who are self-isolating with coronavirus or as a coronavirus contact has increased markedly. It's also important to say that COVID has other impacts on the council. We have seen in a number of services significant increases in demand. Some of that is directly related to COVID. For example, we've seen a 20% increase in referrals for adult social care, with 100 additional children in the children's social care system, 1,000 more children who are in receipt of free school meals. And there's an awful lot of pent-up demand in many of our services as people understandably weren't able to access those services during lockdown. And we're also, as I said, working very closely with NHS colleagues to ensure that we have an effective booster vaccination programme, which will start off in September and probably run all the way through the autumn and winter, which will be incredibly important in maintaining people's immunity to the virus during the most challenging time of the year. Just in terms of vaccination, Harrow continues to do very well in a North West London and London context, but as people will know, the vaccination programme has been more difficult to deliver in a big conurbation such as London. We have a very young population compared to the national average. We have a much more mixed black and multi-ethnic population where there's been a much less trust from some communities in terms of the vaccination programme. So we have done very well, but there is still work to do, very much focused on ensuring that we provide particularly at the moment, the under 40s with the first vaccination and getting second vaccinations out as quickly as possible. We are running a whole series of marketing campaigns, and there is a pop-up clinic that's been offered this Sunday at Roxbourne Medical Centre. But it is absolutely the case that as we get down the cohorts and we're seeking to target younger and younger people, the challenge across the country and in Harrow has become more difficult to get people to take up their first vaccinations, and we need to work hard on that, because in the long term we need 85% plus of the population to be double vaccinated in order to be in a position to control the pandemic in the medium to longer term. So this slide here, for the record, highlights the proportion of people in various cohorts where we've achieved high levels of vaccination. You can see in the older age groups it's well over 85%, but for the 18 to 29 cohort we are still in first vaccinations at just under 50%. So there is still considerable work to do to make sure the vaccination programme is completely effective. So that covers the specific response to COVID as it stands at the moment, Chair. What we've also included in the pack of slides, which I've referred to previously, is that the council will have a key role in planning for recovery. Obviously, COVID will continue to dominate, but we are moving in part away from an emergency response to one focused on recovery, working closely with the NHS around catch up on treatment, supporting local businesses around the economy, working with schools in terms of ensuring that there are plans in place to support children catching up their education, working closely around mental health across the children's and adults range, and also planning for a potential surge in homelessness and evictions as the law changes around eviction bans. And you can see, taking all this collectively, the response to COVID, recovery, the demand pressures that have been put in place due to COVID, that there's a significant challenge around organisational capacity and resilience, which is impacting across the board. I included here which I shared also with the Scrutiny Committee on Monday, the Council's strategic priorities for 21-22, ensuring that we continue to deliver around COVID, the HSDP, which is on the agenda this evening, the accommodation strategy, our work around health and social care integration, our very important work around equalities, diversity and inclusion. The leader referred to our stance and key public messaging around the importance of anti-racism after the racism that the England football team received, and that's one of our key focuses going forward. Making sure that we deliver a whole series of our modernisation programmes, including dynamics and general improvements to organisational culture. And clearly we have a challenging ongoing scenario around keeping this year's budget in balance and planning for the budget over the medium term. And as I have done on previous Cabinet presentations, felt it was important to very much pay tribute to the thousands of council staff, whether they're delivering frontline services, specialist services in social care, support services across the organisation, or whether they've been involved directly or indirectly in supporting our activity around coronavirus. Done a magnificent job over the past 17 months in a scenario which has been very challenging and relentless. And we know that there is going to be many more months of work, both to continue to manage the pandemic and everything associated with it, including dealing with the pent-up demand and putting recovery in place. So there's a lot of work for us to do to ensure that the organisation as a whole is resilient, we maintain support and well-being of our staff and maintain morale. And obviously there's going to be a big push to get many of our staff to get a break over the summer period, as many have worked very significantly without breaks during the highlight of the pandemic for the past 17 months. So, Chair, I will conclude my presentation there and just really summarise in a number of different ways to say that we are in a much better position than we have been for many months due to the success of the vaccination programme and its efficacy in reducing serious illness, hospitalisation and death. But we are some way from being out of the woods. There are many people who are not yet fully vaccinated. Coronavirus case levels are rising rapidly, and whilst vaccination provides significant protection, it doesn't provide a foolproof and bulletproof protection from COVID. So we would anticipate that there'll be ongoing challenges of COVID, particularly as we get into the winter months. And sat alongside that, a lot of work that we need to do, both in dealing with the extra demand that's happened across the system and in our communities due to COVID, and also that we plan and support recovery. So my last point there, which is that COVID-19 in many forms will continue to dominate the council's work and priorities for many months to come, is really key. And I would just like to again finish, Chair, and I'm sure you and all the councillors would want to share in this, is to thank all of the staff across the organisation for their efforts over the past 17 months and beyond. So thank you.
Excellent, thank you, Sean. And on behalf of the councillors, I think we will extend our thanks to the staff. It has been a relentless 18 months and we're still not out of the pandemic. You know, the pressure is going to remain and rising demand is coming through, and they've never given up, really. They just sort of continue, and but they're tired, and I can understand that as well. So we'd like to extend our thanks to all staff across the council. Is there any questions from anyone at the moment? I can't see any hands up, but it's just two reminders, really. We had a webinar the other night on Tuesday around long COVID. The importance of actually going to GPs and sort of with the symptoms to make sure it can be sort of assessed correctly, but also that there's a record so we can understand how it's spreading across the country and how many people are infected. And the other one was the plea from GPs themselves that you should, you know, if you've got underlying health concerns and you're concerned about anything, you should be going to your GPs, even though, you know, we're through that part of COVID, but we don't want to build up a backlog of serious health issues later on down the road. So it's really to make sure that you are sort of speaking to the health service. They are, I think they said, Sean, earlier on that they're at 120% capacity at the moment, trying to deal with the backlog of case elective care. But it is important that people do go along and speak to them. You know, as our partners, they've been very helpful to us. The team worked very well with all our hospitals across Northwest London, and, you know, from discharges to hospitals to the support they give us, and we have supported them. So is there any other comments? So thank you very much, Sean. The recommendation on this report is that we note the presentation that has been published on the council's website, but can we also note that we although people are coming out of lockdown from Monday, that the council services are under quite significant pressure still, and we'll bring an update through as and when opportunity avails itself. Is that agreed?
Noted.
Noted. That's a good point, Phil. We now move on to councillor questions. We've got 4 questions tonight received and accepted, and 15 minutes has been allowed for this on the agenda. That's in the Constitution. The published questions will be taken as read, and we'll go straight to the answer and then any supplementary question. So I've seen Councillor Marilyn Ashton on the call. So the first question is from Marilyn to me about whether I take seriously issues raised by opposition councillors when they ask questions at Cabinet and revert to them in a timely manner. And I would say, Marilyn, I do take seriously all questions asked at any committee event, when stopped in the streets, or in response to wider communication channels. And if I do not know the answer, I attempt to respond in a timely manner. It would be easier to answer when I know what the question is. But Marilyn, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, well, thank you very much, Graham. You see, I asked a question at the last Cabinet, and you weren't very pleased about it. I can understand why. But you have never reverted to me asking me for any evidence or asking me any follow-up, and you actually completely ignored it, really. And even since then, things haven't improved very much. I mean, just recently, Councillor Assad tweeted that on the 6th of July, actually, she was actually complaining, bemoaning the fact that she'd had the AstraZeneca Oxford jab, and that it wasn't as effective as other vaccines. And we heard tonight with the presentation, excellent presentation by our chief executive, that we're struggling in certain communities, particularly to get people to take the vaccine, irrespective of which one. And you know what, I'm sorry, but I'm going to persist on this. You know, we've really got to understand that these vaccines can be life-saving. And surely, and I would like an answer to this, you can't condone, particularly a portfolio holder in charge of community cohesion, anybody casting doubt on the vaccine programme. And by the way, blocking anyone from your tweets doesn't mean they can't see them. It's very easy to access tweets, but it's just very concerning.
Is that the question, Marion?
It is. I'd like to know what you're going to do about it, because if you're not going to do anything, then we'll all know that you think it's okay to say these things when you're in a position of influence and power.
Well, I'm getting quite concerned, really, the way you're sort of have this fetish of attacking Councillor Peymana Assad. And I am seriously concerned about it, because other councillors tweet and make comments on Facebook, but you individually and selectively pick on Councillor Peymana Assad, and I think it's wrong in that sense. On any single thing that she puts out, you are commenting on it in an adverse way, in a different way to everybody else. And I think it's actually, I think it's quietly wrong. So we now move on to question 2.
Right, question 2 is, well, do you want me to read it, or are you going to say what it is?
Well, I'll say what it is, as I said beginning. So are you satisfied that the council has kept the Headstone Horticultural Society updated during discussions over the future of their site in Long Elms? And I would say, as I've said previously to other councillors, housing services and corporate estates have had meetings with the Horticultural Society on Long Elms. There are currently no plans for development of the site. The society will be consulted if there are future proposals for the site.
Well, you see, I'm pleased to hear that, but the problem is, and I think that the people that run the Horticultural Society are excellent people. They're very bright, very clued up. They understand what's going on. They obviously are not aware that there are now no plans to do anything, you know, by way of evicting them or closing them or making them move. There's been a massive petition. It was reported on the London News. You know, people are up in arms about this. And the only way that they actually found out categorically that actually there are no plans at the moment is when our portfolio holder for housing, Councillor Odell, suddenly popped up on I think it was Fix It. It might have been Harrow Online. I can't remember. I think it was Fix It. And said, well, there are no plans to do anything. This was the first they'd heard of it. I mean, there's a problem with this. You upset people, you worry them, you make them really anxious. They've got enough on their plate with COVID and one thing and the other. And the only way they can know what's going on is either if we can manage to find out, we were unable to. We asked loads of questions of Belinda Pritchard and we never got any real answers, that things have been about.
Do you have a question, Marilyn?
And the only way that these people find out is through a sort of ad hoc post by your portfolio holder for housing. So the question is, do you not think you could do a lot better in communicating with people, particularly people like the Belmont Hall people as well, that you were going to close and demolish? I mean, what are you playing at when people can't find out what's going to happen to them? It's really very high-handed and most unsatisfactory.
Is that your question, Marilyn?
Yes, it is. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to do nothing as you did with the last question?
Well, you've answered two parts of the question, and I'll take them both separately. So with regard to the Horticultural Society, there have been a number of staffing changes within the service, and unfortunately this fell through the gap on some of it. But the shadow cabinet lead from the Conservative group was informed about the changes of direction, because we're still waiting for an outcome from the NHS of what they want to do about GP surgeries. So they have been informed. So the part that fell through the gap is that they should have had a stronger, more detailed conversation with the Horticultural Society. The second part is when your comments, really more than a question, when you spoke about the Belmont Community Hall, and I think your statement is quite dishonest. Because as you are aware, because you sat in on the meeting, the Cabinet's decision was to look at options for the community hall around whether right through from whether we wanted to regenerate the site, right through to if they wanted to buy the site, to look at all those options. And that is what was going to be communicated out. And you know that because it was to look at options and report back to Cabinet in September. Because of the way it was presented across by you, actually, Marilyn, and it was dishonest because you was at that meeting. We decided there's no point, there's no questioning going forward with it, so we did not, and you know that as well. So we now move on to question number 3.
Build a block of flats without demolishing something. Thank you.
Marilyn, I'll say it again. You know what was said at that cabinet meeting, and for some reason you don't want to be honest about it, and I don't know why. So we now move on to question number 3, which is Councillor Anjana Patel. So we now have question number 3, which is also to me. Do you believe the regeneration programme is still value for money? And the answer is, Anjana, I do believe that our current plans are value for money. And as you will see from the report tonight, the HSTP has been tested in the market through comprehensive and diligent procurement and has been signed off as Section 123 best consideration. I am pleased that we are going into partnership with Waits, who are very experienced and will be providing key resources not available to the council otherwise. They are also sharing half the burden of risk as well as the projected reward. Turning to other sites in the council's regeneration programme, we set out to deliver new homes, reinvesting the surplus to support the delivery of services across the borough. More importantly, it's bringing affordable homes to Harrow. So the evidence shows that the regeneration programme is still value for money. And Jana, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Leader. Your report tonight discounts refurbishing the current civic centre as it is too costly at an estimate of £42 million. The cost of the new civic centre in the Peel Road is estimated to be £22 million and the Forward Drive site will cost £44 million. The fit-out cost is estimated to be over £10 million and you have already written off over £7 million. I know management of the finances isn't a strong point for the Labour Party, but surely you understand the combined cost of 83 million is bigger than 42 millions, and we can definitely not afford to lose money like this when you're always complaining that you haven't got enough money coming from the government, you're not getting enough money to do this, you haven't got enough money to do that. So that's my question to you. 83 million is bigger than 42 million pounds. And all this, what you have done, you still think it is value for money, Leader?
Thank you. Actually, we don't put proposals through for this and that. We actually put thoughtful proposals through that are being consulted upon. The regeneration programme is much wider than just building a new civic centre. It also delivers over 1,500 homes, which the borough needs, and it aims towards our 8,000 odd target that that have been set for us over the next 10 years. Also, I want to point out that 40% of these properties are much needed affordable housing, and we will also get the benefit of public realm, commercial space, and actually we'll get a range of social value impacts as well. So it's not just about building a new civic centre and about the sort of look at the costs, because if we spent, it'd be more than £42 million just on the current civic centre site, it would then leave it in a sort of a position where it's not fit for purpose in the sense it's too large for what we need, and it takes up a lot of space that
not really
better used. And if
not
you look
really,
at
Leader,
London,
because
look at the London plan.
Because all the
China, I did say right at the beginning,
all over the borough, and residents are going to find it very, very difficult to actually go to any and find out any services anywhere. You know it too well. Well, we'll have wait and see what happens next year, Leader. Thank you.
China, I said right at the beginning, can people not be rude and interrupt and overtalk people when we're doing a presentation? Yeah, if you wanted a comment, which we're not going to refuse now, but you could have commented later, but that's taken away now because I find it very highly rude to overtalk someone when they're talking.
But Leader, you're not telling people the truth.
Well, now well, you're calling me a liar now, so I've remembered.
No, you're not telling people the truth.
Thank you very much.
What is
so
it?
Now move on to question number 4. Which is
it's all right for you to be
now
rude.
moving on to question number 4. But you're all being rude by shouting at me when I'm trying to run a meeting here.
I'm speaking in my normal voice, Leader.
You're interrupting a meeting, and you know the Constitution and you know the Nolan principles. I advise you that you should stick to them. We now move on to question number 4, which is from Councillor Rabadia, which will be answered by Councillor Peymana Assad.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rabadia, for your question. Your question was what schemes, if any, are being considered to reduce crime and antisocial behaviour in Wealdstone. There have been many improvements in Wealdstone over the last few years, which include a number of investments in our public realm, together with better engagement with residents on key local issues through the Wealdstone Action Group. The Action Group has been central to making Wealdstone a safer and better place to live since 2018, and the feedback from local residents has been positive over this time. I have Wealdstone ward councillors sitting to my right and left, and they can attest to those results. In relation to your question, I did ask the community safety team to speak to the police, and I can confirm that we have no intelligence to suggest that there are any current issues in Wealdstone. However, if you are aware of any issues in the area, then please let me know, and I'll make sure that the council follows up on these issues to resolve them. And with regards to specific schemes, I refer you to my answer at June's Cabinet meeting, where I highlighted the Safe Haven and Safe Spaces initiatives, which of course will be incorporated throughout Wealdstone and the surrounding areas. We're also developing a borough-wide strategy in relation to fly tipping enforcement, which will include hotspots in the Wealdstone area. And finally, I would like to reiterate that the council is always vigilant when it comes to the safety of our residents, and we will continue to work with the police, speak with our local residents and residents groups, and follow up on anything that will help improve the safety of all our residents, including that of women and girls across the borough. We're committed to taking simple but important steps to making women and girls feel safe in Harrow, which is why I am very happy to announce that Harrow Council has signed up to the Women's Nighttime Charter, an initiative led by the Mayor of London. As lockdown restrictions ease and we support our nighttime businesses in welcoming people back, this seems the ideal time to join hundreds of other organisations in the capital that have signed up to the Charter. To support the Women's Night Charter, organisations that operate at night across Harrow will agree to some simple pledges and agree to work together with the council, with the police and residents to make sure women and girls are safe. One of these simple initiatives, for example, is making sure that staff are trained to ensure that they know how to deal with incidents relating to the safety of women and girls, and appointing a champion to promote the pledges within their organisations, amongst many of the other pledges. As an administration, we want to make sure that we all take shared responsibility in relation to the safety of one another across the borough, and that means that the council, the police, local businesses, residents and other partners work together as a team. Do you have a supplementary question?
I do, Councillor Assad. Thank you for your response. If I may just sort of prompt you for a bit more clarification in this. As we know, Wilston is amongst the highest sort of crime level recorded in terms of wards in Harrow, and that's a fact, because it's not something that we need to provide you with proof or intelligence. So effectively, I mean, there is no sort of convincing proof or measures that you're stating that effectively say, or security just improved at the drop of a hat. That's difficult. We know that, practically speaking. So effectively, my question supplementary is just kind of trying to sort of actually eke out some proper answers to say, what are the extra security measures that are planned to improve the safety and sort of for the civic centre for whoever uses it at night. Especially the fact that we had a few more inbuilt measures within the existing civic centre, including, parking just within the premises, which was an important part of the security measures. So effectively, as many measures untried and untested there are, I think we still really kind of need to sort of say some kind of meaningful measures and answers that doesn't take away the way we use the current civic centre and, make sure it's still safe. I don't really see any specific sort of answers that addresses that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rabadia, for your supplementary question. I have to disagree with you, actually, because when I spoke to council officers and our community safety team, they've informed me that this month we haven't had any incidents in Wealdstone, actually. And the way that we manage tensions through the council is through local knowledge of what's happening and cross-borough working. So we make sure that we're proactive in terms of working with the police, but also implementing through our enforcement officers. As you know, there are various different schemes across the borough that we implement in Wealdstone too. I mean, I can send you a list later. I don't have the list in front of me, but for example, the Wealdstone selective licensing agreement that we've just renewed for 5 years also helps to try and tackle low levels of antisocial behaviour and overcrowding and various other issues in Wealdstone. We're working especially with the London Borough of Ealing, for example, in relation to gang and serious violence situations, as well as knife crime prevention. And as I stated, we've just signed up to the Women's Night Charter, which will also be rolled out in Wealdstone. But in terms of specific things that you're looking at, I can send you a list of the policies and pledges that we have across the borough that also apply to Wealdstone. Later on, I will ask officers to draw that up for you. But obviously, we look at lighting, CCTV, working with the police, making sure that their street briefings are provided, and as council officers have informed me continuously, they always check in with residents and businesses to make sure that these organisations that I've just named and our partners are following up on their pledges and their commitments. But we've also seen a list of improvements in Wealdstone. For example, the Wealdstone Square, we've seen 3 new vibrant murals. We've seen community tidy ups through litter picking and various other initiatives. And this has all helped with the reduction of street drinking and other antisocial behaviour, as well as better business engagement. So I have to disagree with you. I don't think that Wealdstone is an unsafe place. I think it's quite safe, actually. And as I stated at the start of my answer, this month we haven't had any incidents recorded or any major tensions in the Wealdstone area. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Pemanda. That concludes the councillor questions. We now move on to item number 6, which is the key decision schedule, which is July to September 21. Can we note that the report on the Grange Farm regeneration, which is phases 2 and 3, has been deferred to the September cabinet meeting? Is that noted?
Noted. Noted.
Thank you. On item 7, progress on scrutiny reports. Can Cabinet note the updates on pages 21 and 22?
Noted.
Noted. Thank you. That now moves to item 9, which is the Harrow Strategic Development Partnership contract close and establishment, which is on pages 23 to 148. Councillor Ferry is now leaving the meeting, and I'm sure he'll be invited back when we've concluded this item. I think you get sent an invite, Keith, when the meeting, when you're allowed back in. So we're just waiting for Keith to leave the meeting. Go and have a cup of tea. Keith has now left the meeting. So can I draw your attention to the reference from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which has been published as part of the documentation online. As we agreed earlier, I would like to welcome Councillor Sachin Shah and Councillor Stephen Greek, who will be speaking on this item as Chair and Vice Chair of Scrutiny. Can I also ask that the confidential appendices are noted now, otherwise Cabinet would need to move into a private session. Is that agreed?
Agreed. Agreed.
If anyone feels the urgent need, and I do say urgent need, to move into the part 2 items, would you let us know or hand? We have been well briefed on this item on the report. It's not a surprise to us, so we shouldn't need to actually refer to speak to those reports. Is that agreed? Agreed. Excellent. So this is, I would say, this has been a long and challenging journey, and has given me personally great insight into the world of major developments and the many challenges and hurdles they must overcome forwards with these larger schemes. The Regeneration Strategy 2015 to 2026 set out 3 core themes around place, communities and businesses, with a key focus to promote sustainable communities by encouraging the right type of development and growth throughout Harrow. And we set out with an ambition to make best use of our own sites to meet the rising demand of housing, especially affordable housing, to move away from a civic centre that, whilst winning an award for its excessive use of concrete, was extremely expensive to run and repair, and have that conversation with residents around the available sites and the opportunities, including around the public realm and inward investment. The consultations and financial modelling supported building a new civic centre in Wealdstone and higher developments within the opportunity area. In a growing uncertain economic environment for local government, in May 2019, which is only 2 years ago, Cabinet resolved a strategic development partnership established with a private sector partner was the preferred delivery approach for the development of the core sites in the regeneration programme, and we set out a 3-stage approach. During the bidder stage, we asked them to submit their tender around their priorities for the key sites, which were to re-provide the civic centre, provide the civic centre at no cost to the council's general fund over the period of the partnership, and maximise affordable housing across the 3 sites. In February 2020, many officers were pulled away to quickly respond to the COVID pandemic, and that work has continued now for over 18 months. So there has been delays in the regeneration process and tendering process, which were not to be unexpected. However, the officers still kept the programme moving forwards, meeting in a socially distanced way to estimate through the tender process and taking great advantage of online meetings, with Cabinet signing off stage 1 in September last year with a preferred bidder. This allowed the council to engage with Waits as its proposed partner and to prepare for the development of its core sites and preparation of contracts. That work has continued, and I have to say I have found Waits to be a great partner, and they have brought in many years of experience and knowledge to take this all forwards. The impact on COVID can never be understated. Ways of working have changed. What we need as a council has changed, and Waits have come forward with further opportunities to support the borough plan priorities, making better use of assets, new technology, new ways of working, and also takes into consideration the way residents and businesses now interact with the council, with over 90% now online. So on the 27th of May, Cabinet approved the council's accommodation strategy, which confirmed the council's future ways of working and finalised the requirements for the new civic centre. This is an important component and informs the HSDP business plan, which is in the agenda packs tonight. We are now at stage 3, which concludes the business plan and seeks approval to close contractual documents and establishes the Harrow strategic development partner with Waits. This report meets the objectives that we originally set out and agreed to deliver wider regeneration across the borough via new and improved mixed tenure housing, civic and community facilities, new employment space, and the enhanced use of property assets within the borough. To accelerate the pace of housing delivery across the portfolio of sites, to secure wider economic and social benefits for local residents, including skills and training, health improvement, and new employment opportunities. To use existing and new property assets to optimise value for the council and the council taxpayer. Contribute to delivery of well-designed, high-quality places that make a difference for communities, businesses, residents and families, both now and in the longer term. There is no doubt that this is one of the biggest decisions that the council has made in many years, and the critical elements of the Waits proposal that are set out in paragraph 2.6.2 on pages 32 gives us additional confidence to move forwards. This partnership has worked very well and will work well going forwards. For a total equity investment of 38.4 million, the partnership will develop over 1,500 homes, of which over 40% will be much needed affordable housing. And the team are in discussions with the GLA to increase that to over 50%. And we'll also get the benefit of public realm commercial space and a range of social value impacts. The council is also receiving a new civic centre, the funding of which is included in the financial viability model and planned to be funded by capital receipts and dividends from the HSDP. This is a good deal for the council and it is a good deal for the residents of Harrow. Scrutiny concerns were raised around the gender and ethnic diversity of the board itself, and we have had discussions with Waits as to how this can be progressed more quickly. As people change roles within organisations, then the board has also changed. Waits has listened to those comments and took immediate action. They're going to appoint Natalie Flint to the board and use Nick to provide other advice to the partnership. And they're committed to continual review as to the makeup of the board going forwards. Recognising that some of the reports are confidential, I will be careful what I say, but I would like to conclude with a number of thank yous. So some of these people are on the call tonight. So to Scott and his team at Pinsett Masons LLP for their legal advice and even managed to navigate me through complex options. To Ishdip and Kim and their team from Everson Young, who gave the council so much commercial and financial advice, ensuring our own figures were right and also being that very critical friend that we needed. To Paul Walker, Dawn, Hugh and their teams for their time and commitment, who came up with solutions to problems and kept this moving forwards. To Sean, when he came to Harrow Council a few years ago now, but he used his knowledge and experience to give real advice around options and kept us moving. To Julian Wayne, Kirsten and Matthew, often working late to ensure reports were ready on time and were always ready to answer questions, whether from me or at council briefings or even council meetings. To all the others involved who gave their advice and knowledge to ensure that this could be successfully brought forward tonight. There is some councillors who worked hard through this, through the whole 2 years and late into the night, discussing it with me to make sure we was going in the right direction. So to councillors David Perry, Adam Swirsky and Natasha Proctor, who over the past 3 years were there late at night, were regular briefings that normally overran, but particularly for their support and guidance. And finally, I would like to thank Councillor Keith Herrick. As the Cabinet member over the years, he brought forward regular reports, quarterly reports around the regeneration programme. He brought them to Cabinet. The opportunities and wider development sites across the borough, the inward investment, where we could meet our housing target, how we could increase our affordable housing within the borough, how we could make the best use of our sites. Keith kept that vision alive for us all. And finally to Waits, really. So Waits Residential has a wealth of experience delivering high quality development projects. With their expertise, we will unlock potential for these sites, creating new communities and new opportunities for local people. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to Waits and look forward to the amazing things I know our partnership can achieve. Harrow is crying out for high quality affordable housing. Too many people are trapped in unsuitable, overcrowded accommodation. They deserve places to live that will support their success and allow their families to flourish. We are committed to doing all that we can to meet Harrow's future needs within our existing developed environment. That means using sites like these much more efficiently. By making this commitment, we can protect our precious green belt and ensure that the development proposals we bring forward are appropriate, sustainable and backed by investment in infrastructure. This decision tonight opens up Harrow to a new and exciting future. Our work with Waits will benefit countless local people and improve the lives of generations to come. And as we begin to emerge from the devastating impact pandemic, this signals the start of our renewal. I therefore move the recommendations as set out in the report tonight. I'd like to sincerely welcome Waits into Harrow. Thank you. I would firstly like to ask Councillor Natasha Proctor if she would like to speak to the report.
Thank you, Graham. Yes, I would like to speak to the report. Completely agree with all of the thank yous that you just made, but there are a couple of thank yous that I'd like to make as well for the hard work that's gone into this. When I became finance portfolio holder, I was very quickly brought up to speed on the finer details of the HSDP programme. Obviously, as a councillor, I had a good awareness of it anyway, but I've been so impressed with the skills, the knowledge, the commitment that the teams have put into this to ensure that it's financially viable and a success. So more importantly, all of this information has given me the confidence to bring this report to Cabinet tonight and the knowledge of the positive impact that this redevelopment will have on the residents of Harrow. So I would like to just point out and especially thank Dawn and the finance team, along with Ishdeep and Kim, for taking me through the numbers many times and for ensuring that our borrowing is manageable and our risks are minimised. As I just said, I have full confidence that this scheme is viable and the work that's been put into the plan has definitely ensured this. So thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. And before we invite some other speakers in, I would like to invite Councillor Sashi Shah and Councillor Stephen Greek to speak on the report. But this report has been to scrutiny a few weeks ago, and their recommendations are attached to the report. So, Sachin, did you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Thank you to Cabinet for allowing me to speak. I just want to start where others just finished on thank yous. I want to thank, I'm not going to name all the officers that both Graham and Natasha mentioned. I want to, on behalf of the Scrutiny Committee, thank them because the amount of time and effort over the last year these officers have put into the committee and briefing the committee has been immense. It's probably been more energy put into the Scrutiny Committee than I've ever known it, and that's a real tribute to the officers that done a fantastic job in giving us the opportunity to look at it. So I want to just place on record thanks on behalf of the whole committee The committee has looked at this, looked a number of times, and Cabinet has a list of essentially a fairly comprehensive write-up of the committee's views and the discussions we had at committee. I just want to highlight a couple of things. First of all, I want to welcome the change in the board as discussed at scrutiny. I think we were very surprised that it was an all-male board, and it's very good that things have changed. What I will say is it shouldn't be. I know weights have made a change. It shouldn't necessarily be for the private sector to do all the heavy lifting on this, and it may be worthwhile the council looking at expanding the board from rather 3 on each side to 6 on each side to ensure there is a gender balance on the board. It is a very important board. So while I welcome Cabinet, the administration taking on board some of the comments from the committee, I would push to go a little bit further. The other area the committee looked at, this is the largest contract the council will have signed in a long time, and we would have liked to have seen a bit more connection between this and things like the borough plan and the overall strategy and narrative of the administration. This would have been a good opportunity to help implement some of those big aims within HSDP, and that's an area that perhaps coming forward, especially when the borough plan is back on the back in the proposals, that we can hope to see how the HSDP will link to that. The other area that I think was quite a lot of discussion around was around risks. And there are a large amount of risks associated with HSDP, and I was a little disappointed at the risk register, and it wasn't as full as I would have expected for a scheme of this size. And I'd urge Cabinet members, as decision makers, to look at those risks. If proposals and priorities change, the council may be locked in for until 2030, 2035. Well, after certain, a lot of us might not be around back then, but then who knows what the priorities will be, but the council will have been locked in for a long time. So I think it's worth a constant monitoring of the risk register, regular updates to the committee to have a look and see how those risks are going and whether the change of priorities. Finally, I know Stephen's probably going to talk about a few areas, so I won't step on his toes. Finally, I'll talk from a personal perspective, and I will talk about the affordable housing and the council own, because it is an area of personal passion for me. Planning policy is for sites like this to have 50% affordable housing. The council is providing 40%. I note the leader's comments earlier on around looking to the GLA for grant. I think that's very positive. I'd like to have seen the council have 50% affordable with as a commitment. If that can be funded from GLA grant, great. If it can't, we should be doing it ourselves. And finally, while there are lots of words in the reports around the council through the HRA owning some of the affordable housing and turning to social housing, there's no commitment whatsoever. There's lots of words like if it can be afforded in the future. It's a real opportunity. These are large council-owned sites. It was a real opportunity to build on work done previously on restarting the council's council house building programme. So it'd be good to see a greater commitment from the administration on building more council homes and using our own land to do that. All of those things were discussed at the scrutiny committee. Our recommendations and at the minutes of our meeting are appended to your report, but I'll leave it there and open up to give Stephen a bit of time to speak as well.
Stephen?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Leader. Yeah, thank you. Just to sort of follow on from that, I would like to echo the thanks that that Sachin has given to the officers that support us on scrutiny. We've been at for about a year now, and it's been it's a lot of work from a lot of people. from the officers that support us, but also just a word for my for our committee colleagues as well, because it's been they've put a lot of effort in as well in terms of all the many scrutiny meetings that we've had. So thank you to them as well. Obviously, Sachin's given you a flavour of the level of scrutiny that we've done, and our role as chair and vice chair is really to just present some of the issues and concerns that have been raised, and our role as a committee was to form a collective view, rather than was not to form a collective view, but just to raise questions and ask concerns. So some of the issues, some of the other issues that were raised about this particular item, firstly the lack of planning briefs for any of the sites, which in the time available, had that exercise been done, could have provided more certainty from a planning point of view, and could have ensured proper public consultation before the council committed itself to the HSDP contract. The importance of ensuring that the new homes meet housing need, especially for larger family homes, especially in view of the council's stated objective to tackle overcrowding in its regeneration strategy, the potential for excessive heights on the HSDP schemes of up to 18 stories, and the substantial impact this could have on the local area. How the council representatives on the board will make decisions, and how councillors and residents can hold our board members to account for the decisions that they make. This includes whether there will be any protocols published to govern this. We haven't seen any of that as yet, and whether any of these arrangements will be open to scrutiny and recommendation from GARMS. The current lack of key performance indicators in the HSDP plan was raised as quite a concern. And the current lack of having anything to measure, to assess and measure performance against. The current lack of public consultation on the HSDP proposals before the council commits itself and signs up to this agreement, but also following that, the need for full consultation well before any planning applications are submitted, and the importance of ensuring that council-owned land is not formally transferred to a HSDP until such consultations and planning permissions are taking place. The ongoing issue of the ongoing safeguarding issues, which we heard a question about this evening, about the safety of officers, councillors and the public, and how their safety can be ensured, especially for those leaving the new civic centre late at night, especially if they're leaving on foot, given currently the lack of parking in the proposal, and along with that, the continuing lack of a parking strategy across the HSDP, but in particular for the new civic centre, to ensure it's fit for purpose and accessible to all its users, including residents, officers, councillors and community groups. And while we've heard various suggestions for where additional parking capacity might come from, so far none of this has as yet come to fruition. So we really need to see more progress on that. The current lack of a comprehensive business plan to support the accommodation strategy. We've got a 74-page business plan for the HSDP, but obviously there's council expenditure on top of that is out of scope of the HSDP, such as Forward Drive, the ancillary sites, and we don't have a comprehensive business plan to cover all of that. It was suggested in our latest meeting that the council might be now doing that and has listened to those concerns, which would be welcome, but obviously we haven't seen that yet, and we also need to see regular monitoring of that. Similarly, it remains a concern that the council's definition of cost neutrality excludes some of these extra expenditure that will push it into being an overall cost rather than cost neutral. The need for a full reconciliation of the substantial cost changes since the beginning of the HSDP process. In particular, it's not clear where the cost savings have gone from the large reduction in space of the new civic centre compared to the original proposals. The lack of detail in the HSDP business plan and financial projections on the assumptions used to arrive at the costs, and the optimum break-even threshold by build quantity or size. The need to preserve the heritage features of the current civic centre, including the Middlesex glass and tiles, the civic portraits, the artwork, the Mayor's Parlour collection, and the War Memorial. And concerns were raised that some of these are still yet to be considered within the HSDP budget, and that really does need attention as soon as possible. The need to be mindful of the upcoming council elections in May 2022, and as far as possible to avoid tying the hands of the next administration, whoever they may be, especially in making decisions that may be costly to reverse or amend by any future administration should they choose to do so. The continuing lack of detail on the ongoing delivery of children's and adult services is a particular concern within the new arrangements. And in view of the density of the proposed developments, the need for substantial evidence of infrastructure requirements and improvements, including buses, trains, road capacity, sewage and drainage, high-speed broadband capacity, school places, doctors' surgeries, and hospital beds, etc. So hopefully that gives you a flavour of some of the issues that we've raised. As I said, it would be beyond our remits to draw any conclusions about what decision Cabinet should take this evening, but I hope you'll consider these matters very carefully, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Stephen. You gave us a long list there, but I will respond in a moment. I'm just seeing if there's anyone that's got their hand up. Sean's got his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just thought I would, in response to the comments that the Chair and Vice Chair of Scrutiny made, thank them for their comments, particularly in terms of their thanks to officers and others who have supported the process to date, and I think that it has been the most intensive and detailed scrutiny process that I've been involved in, and the quality of the questioning and the engagement, both informally and formally, was very good. I think I do want to say, though, that the way some of the information was presented there suggests that the answers to those questions that were raised weren't given, and they absolutely were, quite comprehensively in the meeting. So I just think that it is important to say that whilst there may not have been agreement on all of that, I think it was fair to say that there was, comprehensive answers given to a number of the points that were made, and that I'd hope that was reflected within the minutes and contents of the meeting.
Thank you, Sean. I'll pick up the points at the end. Is there any other comments? No, so I can't see any other hands up. Actually, I'd like to thank Scrutiny as well. Going to Scrutiny, I'm just pleased that it started at 6:30 rather than the old time of 7:30, to be honest. Because it was quite a lengthy sort of meetings, and there's more than one. I think we've been more times to Scrutiny around this sort of programme than anything else we've ever discussed, and I think it's been worthwhile because some of the points that have been raised have been very worthwhile. That it showed that you've read a lot of the paperwork and understood the direction of travel we were taking. There's a few things that came up, and some things I agree with. The part around affordable housing, I agree with Sachin that we should try and maximise the amount of affordable housing we can have out of any development. It does depend on cost, and as the partnership starts moving forward with planning applications, we've got to see where that world takes us. By having a smaller civic centre, it also gives us an increase in affordable homes, and there may be other opportunities as the development moves forward. We've also seen some statements over the last few days from government around affordable housing, or housing per se, and maybe there'd be other funding coming through the GLA and through the Mayor that would actually raise that level up, because I think people are all starting to realise that the rents are getting out of control, which is driving people further out of Harrow. The change to the board is noted, and that was answered, and a lot of the points I think you made Stephen, is things we've got to look at going forward. Like moving the plaques out of the Civic Centre. This isn't part of this report. This report is saying we have a partnership with a very well respected company to start looking at how, you know, the design and layouts and what we of how it's going to be delivered over the next 10 years. And it is going to take a period of time, because you don't just suddenly sort of think up something and move it forward that quickly. This is something that we need to move forward in partnership. They understand the history of Harrow, and as part of the presentations that have come through, you would see that all the people who put tenders in spoke about Harrow as a place. They respected Harrow, and I think Waits do as well. They've looked around to see what the place is like, seen the community. They understand, they've gone to try and understand the community, and they would develop that even further going forward. And part of the key proposal going forward as well will be around joint communications and engaging the community around a whole range of this. So everything else, I think, is you've picked up. The final one would be around the connection with the borough plan. Whilst the borough plan got paused, it will be picked up as we go through. It is a key strand of the borough plan around regeneration and how we deliver housing and services going forward. And we pick up Sachin's point that's quite well made, that we need that link, and that will be drawn in when we get back into the borough plan world. But what we can say is that when we started out, we'd agreed the draft borough plan, and we used those priorities and principles in all the way through the engagement and tender process. So they have been picked up. And the key one I think everyone's really interested in is about KPIs. You know, it's one thing that councils love is KPIs, and they will be developed as we go through the proposal, and like delivery targets, affordable homes, but also some of the key metrics that we normally have. But tonight is around that we agree the contract that be signed off over the next few weeks, and then we'd have those joint partnerships coming forward. And I'm sure that when they come to scrutiny, you would ask these questions to them again. But anyway, thank you for everyone for their time on this. It is an important one, so we allowed it to overrun. But if there's no other comments or questions on this report, can we agree the recommendations that are on page 25?
Agreed.
Agree.
Excellent. So we can now move forward with our regeneration programme. So thank you very much, Stephen and Sachin, for your time on this, and we'll see you again soon. Can we invite Councillor Kitty Ferry back into the meeting, please? I have to give him a boost. So Andre or Nikesh,
We're just inviting him in now, Chair.
Excellent, thank you very much. We'll just pause for a drink of water. We have it? Oh. I'm back. Oh, there's a terrible echo. I think that's because there's two microphones on. Welcome back, Keith.
Thank you very much.
We're not going to tell you the result. You have to look it up online. We now move on to item 10, which is the draft economic strategy 2021 to 2030, which is on pages 149 to 208. So can I ask Keith to introduce the report, please, and advise of any amendment?
Yep, thank you very much, Leader. We've all known over the last 17 months that there's been a tremendous change in the way that businesses operate. Two of the most significant items, I think, are the fact that there's been more realisation that people can work from home, and also there's been a modal shift in the way that we buy things. Rather than going out onto the high street, we now try to buy the things online. And this has also included a a modal shift in the way that we conduct our business, because we're very much more dependent on computers and IT than we were at the beginning of 2020. So with that in mind, we've drawn up what we think is the economic strategy for the next 10 years. And I won't go through all of the contents of the economic strategy, but I would like to say that there are 3 reasons, I believe, why we should have an economic strategy. Firstly, we need a roadmap on how Harrow is going to operate from a business and economic point of view and an employment point of view when we come out of the pandemic. The second reason is that we have to show that we have a vision for the way that this borough will progress over the next 10 years. And I think the draft economic strategy you have as the appendix shows that this administration does have a vision of how we want this place this borough to operate. And the third reason is it also helps when we're asking for funding from government departments and from the GLA and from the West London Alliance and other people, to show that we do have a vision and that their funding is part of that vision to help us move forward. It also informs the borough plan, which is with a more short-term vision of the way that the borough should develop, and it also includes other things other than economic strategy. As we know, the borough plan, one of the first things it's got is to build a thriving economy, tackle poverty and inequality, and to build homes and infrastructure. And the 4 main tenets of this economic development strategy are: first, that we have to concentrate on the skills and employability of the residents of Harrow. As people are aware, we have a very diverse borough population, and some of those people do need help with basic skills such as reading, writing, and arithmetic in order for them to seek to fill the jobs that we hope that will become available through our employability aspect. Secondly, we are a borough that has the most small businesses in the whole of London, and this is addressed by our second chapter, which is business growth and job creation. The third is sustainable placemaking. This is also tied in with the forthcoming local plan that will be developed in the next 2 years, which shows how the spatial development of Harrow should be contained. And the fourth one, and I suppose it goes back to what I was saying right at the beginning, connecting communities, making people aware that they have high-speed broadband, they have the communication skills, and they have the communication apparatus in order to be able to exist in the 21st century. When you read through this plan, you will see not only does it have the aspirations of this administration in the development of Harrow, but it's also based on a lot of evidence and a lot of statistics that we've drawn together. And I think this is important because we have to look at the baseline of Harrow before we can move on to where we want to be in the future. And I'll just conclude that one of the statistics that I wasn't aware of, but it was brought to my attention during the plan process, was that Harrow has the second highest average household size in England, with more homes being overcrowded. That's not the second highest in London, that's the second highest in England. And that's why this administration is committed to building more houses, more homes, better homes, cheaper homes for the people of Harrow in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Keith. Actually, I'd like to comment on the report as well. There's no doubt that the pandemic has had a huge economic impact on Harrow residents and businesses. And as Keith said, it is a credit to our small but highly professional economic development team that has worked closely with businesses and residents throughout the pandemic and has developed this strategy and report tonight. Some of the stats that Keith comes out with, but we're also known for a large number of small businesses, with 94% of companies in Harrow employing less than 10 people. And there were many in the gig economy who were badly affected as work rapidly reduced at the start of COVID. We saw large numbers of residents furloughed, and the number claiming universal credit has grown quickly. We have a below average workplace earnings for residents, which is creating a disparity in income, and a shortage of affordable housing is a major cause of deprivation in the borough that is impacting on health, work and quality of life. The small team rapidly stepped in and stepped up really, and as the report sets out, the work extended during COVID included increased job brokerage, supporting those who become unemployed to work in sectors with immediate needs, and launched a vacancy bulletin, used the apprenticeship levy funding with smaller businesses to create new apprenticeships in care, health and construction and digital sectors, and expanded ESOL employability provision to deliver outreach services. As Keith said, I think the strategy responds to our borough plan priorities and sets out how Harrow recovers from COVID through skills and employability, business growth and job creation, sustainable placemaking and connecting communities. The report sets out the opportunities to reverse negative trends, levering additional investment for alignment with national and regional and priorities, working around the 15-minute city principles and also our partnership with Waits. And it's good to point out really, we're not doing this alone. Through strong partnerships across North West London and Pan London, we will make this a reality for many. I would like to extend my thanks to Mark and his small team, who have excellently supported businesses in Harrow, for submitting so many successful funding bids, keeping businesses updated during the pandemic so they could navigate the plethora of statements and guidance coming out, and also developing a strategy which also fits in with the work across the sub-regions that gives confidence and hope about economic recovery. I think the two reports we just had from the HSTP, which brings up hope for people around what we're doing in Wealdstone, and this report are very closely linked. You know, we need an economic recovery urgently. I think everyone recognises that. And this report sets out how Harrow would do this, not over just over a few months, this is over 10 years. And going out to consultation, it'll just improve as we go along. So thank you very much for the reports. And thanks to Mark and his team. And I saw Mark was on the call on the meeting tonight. I don't know if he wants to add anything, but might not. But if anyone wants, does anyone have any questions on the report itself? No tricky questions for Keith? Oh. So thank you very much. Can we agree the recommendations are on page 150? Agreed. Excellent, thank you. We now move on to item 11, which is Homes to Harrow, Council House Building for London's programme, Airspace Development, which is on pages 209 to 242. And before I ask Phil to introduce the report, can I ask that the confidential appendix is noted here? Otherwise, Cabinet will need to move into a private session. Is that agreed?
Noted.
So Phil, would you like to introduce the report?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. Following on from Councillor's Ferry's comment about supplying those affordable housing for the citizens of Harrow. This is a very small part of that project, but an important part. I'm really pleased to bring this report to Cabinet, as it's proposing to progress and pilot airspace development with the scheme with Airpex ASPAS above existing flats on Buckingham Road and Whitchurch Avenue in Edgware on the Berridge Estate. Apex will take forward design and technical development and construction scheme, and the council will acquire the new homes when completed to provide up to 48 much needed council new housing. The new homes will be modular construction. This will be a first for Harrow, as we are currently using traditional current methods of construction within our Homes for Harrow housing programme, such as Grange Farm regeneration, Chichester Court, and also Alexandra Avenue, to name but a few of the infill projects going forward. Modular construction will allow homes to be constructed in a shorter period of time, minimising disruption to existing residents. These homes will also have a very high quality specification, particularly with regard to energy efficiency, fitting in with the climate change strategy the council has developed. We will continue to involve the local community, thanks to the Berridge Estate TRA, local councillors, Councillor James Lee, Councillor Angela Strachan-Murphy, and also Councillor Nitin Parekh. We've taken on board some of the comments Oh, it's a shame. There we go.
Oh, back. Okay.
Right, we're back. Sorry, I don't know how far I got. So I'll go back to the modular construction will allow the homes to be constructed in a shorter period time, minimising the disruption to the existing residents. We will continue to work with the Berridge Housing team or the community association on that area, and also the local councillors, Councillor Nitin Parekh, Councillor James Lee, and Councillor Angela Strachan-Murphy, who've already played a part in shaping the proposals, some of which are laid out or objectives are laid out in the report. This is including providing extra parking, looking at waste management issues, and also CCTV for the area. So I commend this report to Cabinet and urge the Cabinet members to take this important proposal forward tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil. It's an excellent report. Is there any questions? No. So thank you very much, Phil. There are good recommendations on page 210. Are they agreed?
Agreed.
People are nodding.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. I'm moving on to item 12, which is the Harrow Council's Domestic Abuse Service, pages 243 to 258. Paymana.
Thank you very much, Chair. Harrow Council's contract for domestic abuse services is due to expire in August 2021. This report sets out the rationale for a continuation of the service through a direct award to include additional resources to manage current and future demand. I'm asking Cabinet to agree the awarding of a new contract to our current provider, Hestia, for 19 months from September 2021 until March 2023. The total value of this contract is £536,850. As stated, Cabinet is also asked to agree additional resource to be included within the contract to manage future and current demand for the domestic abuse service. This would be in the form of an additional independent domestic violence advocate working in people's services, which would bring the total number of workers in the borough up to 4 and meet the industry's safe practice guidelines. It would also include an increase in resource for the borough's multi-agency risk assessment conference that reviews high-risk cases, which has seen a 26% increase in referrals since the service was first commissioned in 2015. It's important to note that the council intention was to go out to procurement this year. However, as us, many other London boroughs have also paused their commissioning intentions due to the pressures from COVID-19 and to avoid the risk of bringing in services that are out of step with the Greater London Authority's intentions as well as with national priorities. So it makes sense for us to ensure the continuity of our domestic violence service while we await further clarity on the implications and outcomes of the GLA's strategy for how it intends to meet its duty to provide refugees across London, and the strategies on tackling violence against women and girls nationally. We aim to make sure that any future commissioning decisions will be informed by the updates of the strategies I just mentioned. It's also important to note that the additional resource put into this supports the concept of invest to save and aims to prevent the escalation of abuse and repeat victimisation. Going forward, the cross-organisational domestic abuse project that was set up in 2019 to review and develop a new service model will be reconvened before the council re-tenders the contract in late 2022. Lastly, given funding pressures on the council, the aim is to identify savings in the system as a whole and use our influence to leverage external funding and resources into the borough to ensure adequate and appropriate service for all our residents. Tackling domestic abuse and violence against women and girls is a priority for the borough. It's an issue important to me and fellow councillors, and therefore I will always be a champion for the safety of women and girls in Harrow. I know that we can make the lives of women and girls across Harrow better through close partnership working with the police, our health partners, including the newly formed Integrated Care Partnership, GPs and community organisations. I therefore ask Cabinet to approve the implementation of the recommendations of this report so we can make sure we keep women and girls in our borough safe from abuse. Thank you.
Very well put, Paymana. Is there any questions? Simon.
Yes, very briefly, Leader, I would just like to welcome and add my support to Paymana on this report. I'm so pleased that we are able to continue and expand this excellent service and very important service. It does demonstrate, I think, our commitment, the commitment of this administration to support the victims of domestic violence. It's really important that we do this. It's really important that we fund it so that the workers running this service have a caseload that they can reasonably manage and give the support that's necessary. It's something that I've championed for many years now, and I'm very pleased that this administration can continue in these difficult financial times to fund such an important service. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Simon. And Christine.
Thank you, Leader. I think that this is just so important. It's almost impossible to begin to say why it's important. But I think that what is important to draw people's attention to is how all the different parts of the council have coalesced in bringing this forward and formulating what needs to be done. Everyone will know, I hope, because of my interest in early intervention, that actually investing to save is what we should be doing everywhere, but particularly with people's services. And I think that I thoroughly commend the way you presented this, Paymana and Simon, but I would also just like to add in, because there's so much to say, because of the impact on children. Because the referrals that come in about domestic violence mainly come from two areas. They come from the police and they come through referrals to children's services. We're all heavily invested in this. We all know that it impacts upon people now, and women are usually the homemakers, not always, of course, but they are. What happens to them affects their children, and also children are caught up in what has become, sadly, a more obvious situation because of the pandemic. So I'm glad that all our services have worked together for this. Thoroughly commend this happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine. Is there any other comments?
Chair, I'd just like to respond to Simon and Christine. I agree wholeheartedly with both of their comments. I actually was at the Domestic Violence Forum this morning with organisations who work across the borough trying to tackle domestic abuse, and it was an issue that they raised as well in regards to children being impacted. I know that the government is looking at including children in the new legislation and policies of us having a duty to protect children who also are in households who are impacted by domestic abuse. So I think it's really important that we continue the service and make sure that our policy is in line with any new government legislation and strategies.
Yes, thank you. I think the way this report has been presented and the comments that have been made tonight have shown exactly why we do need the reports and why we do need the service to be there. There is a rising demand on services, partly as people become aware, but it's our responsibility to ensure that someone is there when they need that help. And I think that's just what this service really delivers on. So thank you very much for the report. And the recommendations are on page 244. Can we agree the recommendations, please?
Agreed.
Excellent, thank you. We now move on to item 13, Treasury Management Shared Service Arrangements with the Greater London Authority, which is on the supplementary agenda. So, Natasha.
Thank you, Graham. So this report sets out the recommendation that Harrow Council become a participant in the shared service arrangement operated by the Greater London Authority, GLA, for the provision of Treasury management services. The reason we're asking for approval for the recommendations in the report is to promote effective financial management and comply with regulations issued under the Local Government Act, the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, Code of Practice in Treasury Management, and the CIP-FA Prudential Code for Capital Finance. Along with meeting requirements of the Council's financial regulations. As a bit of background, the current situation is that the Council's Treasury management function is very lean, and over the years the post of Head of Treasury Management and the Pension Fund Manager has proved challenging to recruit to, shall we say. In fact, the post has been vacant since February 2020. During this time, which obviously coincided with the COVID-19 pandemic as well, Treasury management activity has been kept to a minimum. No prudential borrowing has been taken on during this period, and investment activity has been undertaken as normal. There are stable interim arrangements in place to cover the pension fund elements of the role, and these are expected to continue until the end of this one-year pilot period being recommended in this report. After the one-year period, being a participant in the GLA shared service arrangement position, it can be reviewed and decisions on the permanent recruitment of the role can be agreed. However, like I say, we've been trying to recruit for a long time, and so the report details the different options considered. I won't go into them all here, you can read them. However, it shows that taking into account these recruitment challenges, the recommendation is that the Council become a participant in the shared service arrangements operated by the GLA, and then that provides the provision for Treasury management services. Yeah, like I said, there were some other options, but this is the one that's recommended because we've tried other things and this seems like the best solution. Thank you.
Excellent. I don't see any hands up, so I'm assuming everyone's agreed. So if we move straight to the recommendations, are they agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Excellent. We now move on to item 14, which is a very interesting report, the Treasury Management Annual Report 2020 to 2021. Natasha.
Thank you, Graham. I can't believe people didn't want to speak more about pensions and management services. However, this report is asking Cabinet to note the Treasury management outturn position for 2020-2021. I know time's ticking on, there are lots of numbers in there. So again, I will leave people to read them in detail. However, in short, it shows that Treasury management activity has all been conducted within the required regulations and shows that activity has been kept to a minimum during the pandemic for obvious reasons. Robust cash flow management has enabled planned investments through the capital programme to be managed through internal arrangements rather than planned borrowing, which has freed up the capital financing budget to support services, which I'm sure as we've all heard constantly during these meetings for the last year how much pressure has been put onto them. So the prudent financial management, again, of Dawn and her amazing team has kept us going, and that is represented in the report. So a level of investment income has also been retained during what has been this difficult year. So I just want to finish with saying once again, I have to pay tribute to Dawn and her team, and I want to just recommend them and commend them all on an excellent job done. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. I've seen a plethora of hands come up on this report. No, there's no comments or cancelling made. I'll just say that we could pass on our thanks to Dawn and their team because it is a very complex area to work in. Absolutely. And it makes sure that the council's got enough money to function with. So it's really important. If we can move straight to the recommendations, which are on on pages 259, I think. Can we agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Excellent. So that moves us to item number 15 with any other urgent business. I haven't been notified of any, but I'd just like to wish you all a very sort of safe summer, knowing that the pandemic is still rife in the country. If you're going away, keep safe. Whatever you do, get tested, make sure you're vaccinated, and we look forward to seeing you all very healthily return in September. So thank you very much.
Take care, everybody.
Right,
Bye now.
good night.
Take care.